So, sometimes you can find this also in the report. That's the interrelation between the Melbourne scale and the PCB scale. So it's quite simple. The bubble, the bigger the correlation. The red is a negative correlation. The blue is a positive correlation. Yeah, a very important remark methodologically. These bubbles do not say something about the quantitative presence and power of a certain pattern. That's a mistake that is often made in interpretations. To put it simple, you see, for example, the biggest bubble is between external critique and secularization. You see? Okay, that means if someone is in external critique, he wants to secularize the school very strongly. Yeah? Or if someone is wants to secularize the school, he will most be in external critique. And that's the biggest bubble. So sometimes people think, oh, that means that the school is secularizing. That's of course not the case. There are almost no external critique people in the schools. Yeah. But if they are external critical, then they would like to secularize the school very strongly. So this is saying nothing about how strong a certain correlation weights on the school. It depends on how many people you have in external critique that it will secularize. But if you hire in your staff someone with external critique, he will strongly have a secularizing impact on the identity of your school, if you take one in. Okay? You understand this? It's about relations between things, but not about how strong these relations weight on the school. Therefore, you need to look to the scales. Okay. The method of reading the bubble graphs and 8 steps. First horizontally, 4 times, and then vertically 4 times. Yeah? And then you should just use your logical reasoning. What do you think? Someone in literal belief does not want to secularize the school, of course, if you're in literal belief. Interesting is also that someone in literal belief, is this now primary or secondary?
Both.
Both, yeah. All adults together. Yeah? Oh yeah, 5,000 people. That's a lot. You see, people in literal belief don't want to recontextualize. And why is that? That's a believing style, recontextualization. Why do you think that literal beliefs don't want to do that? Because? Yeah, another answer? Why do literal beliefs don't want to collaborate to recontextualization? Sorry?
They have to recontextualize their belief.
Yeah, indeed, it's a threat to their belief because it asks that you enter into dialogue with the context, and they want to reconfessionalize, as you can see. Yeah? And you see how they use values education, you see? They use values education to reconfessionalize. That's what they want. And in that way to fight against secularization. Yeah? And not recontextualize. Yeah, those in external critique resist against secularization, have I shown. And for the rest, yeah, resist all the rest, but not very high. You know why that is? Because Australians do not know what external critique is. Yeah. In Belgium, you have real external critique. And these 3 red bubbles are very high. Yeah. So here they're also high. Yeah, and what's also funny is, yeah, sometimes I ask to the students during the exam, yeah, why do external critique reject more recontextualization than reconfessionalization? While we know that reconfessionalization is a more, let's say, conservative Catholic option than recontextualization. And nevertheless, external critique has more problems with recontextualization. Who knows?
Yeah. Their critique could be then brought into
Yes, very good. Yeah, so external critique is more afraid of recontextualization because external critique is a literal and not a symbolic cognitive style. And for them, recontextualization is more dangerous than reconfessionalization, as you say, because they could have the risk to get drawn into the dialogue, and they don't like to dialogue. Yeah, what sometimes, often, people do also not understand is why there is a negative correlation between external critique and values education. Because one sometimes say that, yeah, also unbelievers can have values. But remember yesterday I explained values education, yeah, and values education is not the secular values of the government, nor the Catholic values that Catholics particularly admire, but values education measures the strategy of connecting the human values with the Catholic tradition. And of course, external critique doesn't like that. Yeah? Even if you see also, but that's already quite complicated, that they reject this not that much. You know why is that? The reason for that is that they can easily take the values and leave Christ at school. Yeah? So that's also funny that the external critique also see that values education is not so dangerous anymore. Let the Catholics do their values education. That's yeah, not very dangerous. I take the butterflies home. Yeah, that's very nice. Okay? So you see the external critique is making that analysis too, to a little degree. Then you see relativism. Yeah, relativism, yeah, for them everything is okay, yeah? You see? So that's not a very engaged position. Remember that relativism becomes stronger at the year 11, 12. Yeah? Yeah, Hutzebout, who is the professor who created the PCB scale, says that relativism is an unengaged position. You can do whatever you want in relativism. And going back to your question, I need to know your name, Bill. Yeah, going back to your question, when you are 17, it's also it's a time in your life where you can do everything you want. You have no obligations. The whole world is before you. You can choose and experience everything. That's normal that relativism is then a little bit higher. The question is, if they grow older, if automatically that relativism will not shift more to a more engaged position. And in that way, we could have hope that recontextualization will come back for them when they get older. Of course, that's an optimistic hypothesis. And if we take it for serious and it's wrong, then we have taken the wrong risk. Yeah? So we should be careful to be too optimistic too. Okay. Yeah, Jan also put the arrow there. I'm sure that's not an accident. You see that relativism can contribute to recontextualization. Yeah? But also in the opposite, that recontextualization can lead to relativism. And Professor Boeve don't like to hear that. Yeah? That if you recontextualize and you're not in post-critical belief, but you're in relativism, then you have the risk that your recontextualization ends in relativism. You remember I showed yesterday another picture of Jesus Christ Superman. That's an example of a recontextualization that is in fact in my reading too relativistic. Yeah? So we need also to explain to students, especially in teachers training and in religious education, that if they recontextualize, that they should be careful that they do not end up in relativism. Recontextualization is not a free ticket to do whatever you want. Yeah? Okay. And then PCB belief, yeah, post-critical belief. Negative, stronger negative for secularization and literal belief. That's interesting. Yeah, that's an important element in the church discussion, that you can show to the bishops empirically that a good formed post-critical believer is a better guarantee for the Catholic identity of your schools than a literal believer. Yeah? It's not much, but it's higher. Okay? You also see that for someone in post-critical belief, reconfessionalization, values education, and recontextualization have all three a positive score. Yeah? But here you see you recontextualize to reconfessionalize. Yeah? Yeah, and to be honest, can you change the arrow? Where do you think? No? Here. Yeah. You see that even these post-critical believers use in their recontextualization values education. To be honest, theologically seen, it would be nicer if that would be a little bit lower, because then these post-critical beliefs would be more stressing the particularity of the Catholic tradition. Yeah? In Belgium, if we do analysis of the CEO members, and Jan can show these results, if we do the same with these kind of groups, and we show this in Belgium, then we have here a zero correlation, or even a negative one. Yeah, that means that in Belgium, people like you already see that post-critical belief, yeah, has not to use values education to recontextualize. Yeah, that values education indeed does not work. So here there is still the belief in Australia that values education can help, yeah, to recontextualize and to reconfessionalize. In Belgium, that's already become negative. Of course, because the confessionality is much lower and secularization is higher. Yeah? So you see here there's still a lot of hope that values education can contribute to recontextualization. The effect is also that people have less capacities to see the difference between values education and recontextualization. But the students do see, they don't see recontextualization, the others think they do. So you can see the whole analysis raising up just looking to the graphs. Yeah. So and we have to stop. So you see, we have gone now through the whole thing very slowly. We accumulate the information. These are not separate graphs. They form a kind of gestalt. You see a gestalt of this school system raising up. And the questions, the research questions are literal belief, post-critical belief for the children. Yeah? The difference between post-critical belief and relativism with the older children. And the adults confusing values education with recontextualization. And in this sense, I hope that the lectures of yesterday can be distributed, Tony, so because they give information to recognize this. So what we then do is go in the portfolio of the school to look for evidence for these things. And what we find in the portfolios, we use them as starting point to talk with the school, not on such an analytical level, but more on the level of the Socratic level, you could say, where you help schools to find out themselves these patterns. That's it for this morning lecture. Thank you. Yeah.